Maxey from outside. Sixers lead, courtesy of Tyrese Maxey.
Hit deep to left field. Going back is LoCastro. It is gone!
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode here of the Beef Up Front podcast with your host, Ryan Coyle. As always, continuing on today with our college football preview series, episode 4. So far, we've hit on Penn State, Colorado, Nebraska, and today we're going to be hitting on a group of 5 team, actually. And you might be thinking, why group of 5? Well, this year, the first year of the 12-team college football playoff, the highest-ranked group of 5 team will be going to the playoff. They could get the 12 seed, they could get the 5 seed, or so on. However their season goes, or however they kind of fall in the rankings, they can't get in the top 4 due to those being reserved for the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, and the SEC conference champion. But they are eligible for one of these next few spots, and they will get an automatic spot, the highest ranked team out of this group. When you look at the betting odds, according to DraftKings, the 2 betting favorites for this group of 5 spot are Liberty and Boise State, both at plus 400. Today's episode, though, we will be getting into the Memphis Tigers, who are plus 700, the third best odds out of the group of 5 teams to make this year's 12-team college football playoff. And when I was kind of going through some teams and doing my previews, this was a team that definitely caught my eye. I could see them for sure being one of these squads. So I wanted to make sure they got an episode, they got a preview, and their team, I think, that can definitely make some noise, but not only win a lot of games, but be a really fun and entertaining team to watch in the American Conference this year. And they have a very big non-conference game as well against Florida State that I'm sure we'll get into eventually. But just like the other episodes, we'll structure it. Talk a little bit about the head coach, the 2023 season, the offense, the defense, and then we'll go into the schedule prediction, break down the entire schedule, and give you my overall thoughts on this team and how their season is going to go. But head coach for the Memphis Tigers, Ryan Silverfield, 31-18 in his 4 years at Memphis. Hasn't been great, hasn't been that special. Last league title 2021, but he led this team to a really strong season last year. He's been known as, during his time here, as a good offensive coach. They haven't really had the greatest defensive success, but he's been a really good, successful offensive coach here at Memphis. And one of the main reasons why I think they'll keep this strong offensive play up this year is because of what he's been able to do during his time here. And I think put them in position to be one of those G5 teams going into the last week of the season with a shot and making the college football playoff. When you look at the 2023 season for Memphis, 10-3 losses to Missouri, Tulane, and SMU. Those were 3 really good teams last year. Missouri had a breakthrough season. Tulane won the conference, and SMU was another really good team in the American last year. They lost those 3 games by an average of 7 points. And like I said, those were some really good squads last year. So nothing really to hang your hat on. They still find a way to go out and win 10 games. But last year, the calling card with Memphis, and as it's been for, I'd say probably the last decade or so, with the kind of revolving door that they've had at coach, as Memphis has been kind of a launching point to some bigger jobs over the past few years. But super exciting offense. That's kind of been their calling card. 39.4 points per game last year. That was 6th best in the country. And they also had a +5 turnover margin, which was tied for 30th best in the country. So, when you're able to put up 39, nearly 40 points a game, you win the turnover battle, you're going to be in position to win most of your games. And that was kind of their bread and butter last year as they found their way to that 10-3 season. Defense wasn't fantastic, though. It usually never is when you have such a high-powered offense that's going to snap the ball a lot, run this up-tempo type of style, and really just kind of fatigue your own defense down, because that forces them back onto the field quickly. The defense isn't always going to perform, but for this team to reach that goal of getting into the college football playoff as a G5 team, they're going to have to improve a little bit. I think 28.8 points per game last year, which was 92nd in the country. But in the bowl game, really, this team impressed me, and that's kind of the sticking points where I remembered that throughout this offseason and thinking, all right, who are some of these G5 teams that are going to be vying for that spot? And I know with what Memphis is bringing back and what I saw in that bowl game, they're a team that definitely stuck out to me. They beat an Iowa State team out of the Big 12, 36-26 in their bowl game. And they returned 6 starters on this dynamic offensive squad, especially QB Seth Hannigan, who I'm not going to say is a Heisman candidate, but he's a guy who's going to be up there with the top passers in all of college football this year. With him spinning the rock, this is a team that can definitely compete for that G5 playoff spot. We go into the offense now and break them down. One of the most exciting groups in college football last year that we talked about, they averaged 39.4 points per game. That was 6th best in the country. And they also ranked 14th in total offense with 458.5 yards per game. So it's a team, not only they were moving the ball well, but they were also finding their way into the end zone. And total offense is a great stat. You want to be able to move the ball through the air, through the ground, and just move the ball on teams. But if you're not finishing drives and scoring when it matters, that kind of all goes out the window and for naught. So being able to be 14th in total offense, but 6th in scoring, just a super impressive group. And they returned 6 starters on this side of the ball, headlined by quarterback Seth Hennigan, who threw for over 3,800 yards last year and 32 touchdowns, leading this Memphis team to 10 wins. He's back in the saddle at quarterback again, another year of experience under his belt. He should be a guy that helps lead this offense to very similar numbers as last year. Last season, Memphis scored 35 or more in 9 of their 13 games. So just a group that was able to kind of explode on the regular. It's not like they had 55 points one game and then would go down to like 14, but that 55 it inflated their average. This was a team that was consistently putting up points, scoring 35 or more in 9 of those 13 games. Where I would like to see some improvements with this group this year is the running game. And for the Tigers to kind of balance it out a little bit, I think there might be a little bit too much pressure on Hennigan at times. And a guy that, you expose to dropping back more, he's going to be a little bit more turnover prone. 9 turnovers or 9 interceptions last year. You want to cut that number down a little bit. Way to do that, establish a little bit more running game, keep a little bit more pressure off of Seth Hennigan, and allow this team to move the ball on the ground a little bit more. So I think you take some pressure off him, you improve that rushing offense, which was 75th in the country, respectable, but still it's more towards kind of the below average mark rather than an above average. And I think this year that they have the ability to run the football a little bit better. They returned 2 starters on the offensive line, but they bring in a transfer running back, Mario Anderson from South Carolina. He had 707 rushing yards last year. So he's a pretty proven SEC level back. Transferred from South Carolina, wants a change of scenery, but he should be able to step in here going from rushing over 700 yards in the SEC to one of the established kind of most important, maybe even like first team potential all league running backs here in the American Conference. Definitely a step down in competition that should be able to kind of inflate his numbers, and he could be one of the breakout stars in the conferences here. The Tigers' top 2 receivers return as well in Rock Taylor and Demir Blanksby. These were 2 guys that combined for over 120 catches and 1,900 yards last year, and they returned their starting tight end from last year as well. So a lot of proven commodities there in the passing game at tight end and at receiver with Taylor and Blanksby. Over 120 catches and 1,900 yards. That's rare to see a duo like that return, especially at this level of football. Maybe if we're talking about one of the power conference teams, but to return there at the group of 5, those guys are sure to be in position to light it up this year. But I think it's realistic to be very optimistic about this group again. I think they're going to light it up as long as Hennigan is able to stay healthy and stay on his feet. He should be able to lead this group to similar to, if not better, numbers that they put up on the offensive side of the ball last year. But when you get into the little bit of a worrisome about this team, it's definitely on the defensive side of the ball. It wasn't a group that was very impressive last year, ranked 111th in total defense, but they did rank 92nd in scoring, allowing 28.8 points per game. Not great, not fantastic, not awesome, not something that you're shooting for there as a defense. But when your points are below kind of your ranking in total defense, with total defense being 111th, but your points being 92nd, I value that more, because at the end of the day, it is about what you put up on the board and the points that you allow. If you're able to, or if you let teams move the ball, matriculate the ball down the field on you, but you're able to stop them in the red zone, cause them to go 4 and out on the goal line, or cause them to attempt a field goal, whether it's make or miss, that is a win in my book. So if they are able to, with this offense that I expect to be able to put up between 35 and 40 points per game, even go over 40 or 50 on a given night, if they're able to hold this group that last year this defense had allowed 28.8 points per game. If you're in that 25 to 30 range, you're going to be in the game with a chance to win at the end on most nights. They should be able to get into kind of that 10 to 11 win conversation. They've returned only 4 starters from last year's defense, so you can look at that in 2 ways. Where it's all right, we got four guys, especially our leading linebacker and Chandler Martin coming back. So we have some kind of continuity there. Or, we had only 4 guys returning from a group that allowed nearly 30 points per game, ranked 111th in total defense. It's got to be a little bit better than last year with some new pieces. So you can look at it as kind of either side of the fence there. But 4 guys that are back should lead a group from last year. Still a team that did go on to win 10 games. But Chandler Martin, their linebacker, he's the name to know on this defense. He's a leader there in the middle, led the team with 95 tackles last year. In Memphis's 3 losses last year, the defense allowed 38, 31, and 34 points. If they can hold their opponents to under 30 a game, as I said, with that offense, they're going to be in it at the end every single week. With this high-powered offense, the defense just has to get some turnovers in some key spots, get a few key stops down the stretch, because the offense is going to be clicking more than not. The defense won't have as much pressure, as much onus on it. But if you do want to be that G5 playoff spot, the room for error is pretty thin. You're going to have to go 11-1, 12-0 in the regular season, and then win your conference championship, as well as probably teams like Boise State, teams like Liberty, teams like App State are kind of in the conversation there. UTSA. A lot of these teams are going 11-1 undefeated. So it's going to be kind of best wins, resume, how these teams look, statistics. They're going to take everything into account. And it's going to be a real dicey kind of spot there for the last spot, as I assume the winner of this G5 spot is going to be probably a 12-1 squad at the end of the day. But this Tigers team should be able to compete for an AAC title and a spot in the college football playoff. We'll run through their schedule prediction here next. I'll pull up my screen and share it. But a squad that, like I said, they deserved an episode, and I'm really high on them coming into this year. And it's not going to surprise me at all if they are one of the teams in the college football playoff getting that G5 spot. So you look at the schedule. North Alabama will start them off there with a win. Troy, that's not a cupcake. That's not a layup, but I think that they'll get that one done. Week 3, their third game of the season. That's where everything could really go bonkers for them. Like, they get this win, they should be favored the rest of the way, and every one of their games going forward, that should put them in a position to, I think, if they knock off Florida State, who people are expecting to be a 10-win team or so, be right there competing for the ACC. They go 12-0 in the regular season, win the conference championship. I don't see a way that they're not in the college football playoff. Who knows? Maybe even 2 G5 teams get in. I doubt it. But it would be very hard for me to leave them out of the playoff if they go undefeated and win that Florida State game. But I will have them losing that Florida State game early in the season. I think still working out some things on defense probably, and going to Florida State. That's not going to be easy. So I got them at 2-1 there. But I have them running the rest of the table, beating Navy, beating Middle Tennessee. South Florida is not going to be a cupcake, but have them winning that game. Beating North Texas, beating Charlotte. At UTSA, that's not going to be a cupcake either. They are 12-1 to make the playoff. They're one of the top G5 teams as well. Rice, I have them winning that game. UAB winning that game. And Tulane. Tulane has been kind of the king of this American Conference over these past few years. I do expect them to take a step back this year with Willie Fritz and Pratt, the quarterback, no longer there. But I have this team going 11-1. I think that puts them in a great spot to compete for a playoff spot. You win your conference title, you go 12-1 and see what happens. But still, you go 12-1, whether you make the playoffs or not. That's a really remarkable, good, strong season for them. Their over/under on their win totals is 9. I entered it last night. I got it on a little DraftKings boost. I got them over 9 wins at plus 150. So that's a play I really like, having them win 11 games. I think they're going to be favored in every matchup this year, except that Florida State game. When I look at the schedule, maybe UTSA, see how that game's going. That game's on the road. They could be, a field goal dog in that one. South Florida maybe, but this is an offense that I'm telling you, people are not going to want to mess with and are going to be hard to keep up with. That defense just needs to be able to get a few stops or a few key turnovers to kind of help out the offense at the end of the game if it's one of those situations where whatever team has the ball last. But that's my breakdown for this Memphis Tigers team, one of the G5, definitely competitors. Going to try and get a couple more episodes for these G5 schools and probably on Boise State and Liberty before it's all said and done. But as always, keep it locked here on Beef Up Front on Pick Swap Media, whether you're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Make sure to tune in As always, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, and we will talk soon.